Well, welcome to this edition of Herb of the Week with me, Stephanie Georgieff, your host and instructor for the Botanical Medicine Study course. I hope everyone is as well as can be as the seasons are changing. Here where I am in the Northern Hemisphere, we are enjoying the first delightful days of autumn. I know some places have not experienced these days very positively, and I hope relief comes in the areas where there have been terrible storms. And it seems as this is happening everywhere one can imagine, from North America to Central Europe to Nepal. About 15 years ago, the word climate change was simply absent from any sort of discussing or reporting on various storms or extreme weather. What I can say is that when we start cooperating with nature through our choices in healthcare and through gardening, we can actually stem the tides of these very challenging days. Where I am in the Northern Hemisphere, as I said, autumn has eased in with some really enjoyable weather, meaning some rain, warm sunny days, and cool nights. I'm all in, as they say. Now, autumn in traditional Chinese medicine is the season that dominates the lung and large intestine, and the herbs and foods that nourish and heal this system are spicy and pungent. So we will be exploring some plants in these few weeks. Here we are in early autumn that are specifically healing during this season of change. And for this week's herb of the week, we'll be exploring a plant that is better known in India and China than it is in Europe and the Americas. And it is called long pepper. Now, long pepper is known by its Latin binomial as Piper longum. And this is called either long pepper or Indian long pepper. It's also in Ayurvedic tradition or Hindi, it's called pipali. And this plant is a flowering vine in the family of Piperaceae. And this plant is cultivated for its fruit, which is usually dried, and it's used as a spice and seasoning. Long pepper has a taste similar to, but sweeter and less pungent than that of its close relative, Piper nigrum, which is that famous those famous little black balls that we like to grind on top of our salad. And Piper longum is indigenous to India, Sri Lanka, although there are similar plants in Indonesia. It's a perennial aromatic shrub, and the flowers, and that's what those little cone things are, the flowers grow in spikes, which are harvested and dried to form what we call long pepper. Now, the fruit, which when we get it in the market, and you'll see in the future slides, the fruit of this Piper longum consists of many minuscule fruits. It's almost, you could almost consider it a berry, but it's not botanically correct to say that it's that way. But each one of these little fruits is the size of a poppy seed, and it's embedded in the surface of this flower spike. And the oldest known reference to long pepper comes from ancient Indian textbooks of Ayurveda. And these textbooks were very favorable to what they called pipali. And there was lots of incredible detail on the use for this plant. And I guess we technically could call it a spice. And again, in Hindi, it's called papali. And the history of this plant is very interesting, and it basically goes along what basically the evolution of travel and trade all over the world. And Piper longum reached Greece in the 6th or 5th century before the Common Era. And we know this because Hippocrates, that famous ancient Greek physician, discussed it as a medicament or a medicine rather than a spice. And among the Greeks and Romans, prior to that famous Columbus voyage, which technically is called the Columbian Exchange, but before Columbus, long pepper was a very important and well-known spice. Now, in textbooks and cookbooks, this this Piper longum, pipali, was often mixed up or confused with what we call black pepper. And again, those little delicious balls we like to grind over our salads. Now, while black pepper or Piper nigrum and Piper longum are in the same family of Piperaceae, they are very distinct species. And obviously, because they look totally different. So much so, they were very different that Theophrastus, that close colleague of Aristotle and well-known philosopher and naturalist, he set the record straight that these two peppers were different in his writings on botany. Now, round or black pepper began to compete with long pepper in Europe from the 12th century on. And I think we can thank both Byzantium as well as Marco Polo for that. And it really was pretty much disappeared from palettes and stores and recipes by the 14th century. And it was basically, there was a quest for cheaper and more dependable sources of black pepper. And we know that also spices in general, and that was one of the big catalysts for the age of discovery, was different trade routes and different sources for those spices. Now, we need to remember that Ayurveda is the mother of traditional Chinese medicine. So there's lots of herbs that are commonly used in both traditions, both cuisines from both countries. And sometimes they're identical in use and in description, and others there are differences. Now, me personally, I'm a little old gal with a hardened brain. Sometimes these differences confuse me, but I deeply respect Ayurvedic medicine and encourage everyone to explore it, as there are numerous schools in North America and the United Kingdom, as well as obviously in India, that can teach these principles much better than I can. I'm aware of some herbs that I've used in my practice, but I'm not really good at the diagnosis. It's just similar enough to where it confuses me. And that's just me, because I'm a little older and wiser these days. Now, Piper longum in Hindi is called pipali. And if you Google that, you'll find all kinds of sources and ideas for it. It's called pipali, and it's renowned in Ayurveda for its benefits for the lungs and the digestive system. Now, in the lungs, in Ayurvedic, they use it for bronchodilations, decongestant, as an expectorant, and something that will rejuvenate the lung. And in the digestive tract, it is very powerful in terms of a carminative. So we can see from the slide, it's pungent and sweet. It's neither hot nor cold. So it's sort of one of those lovely Goldilocks herbs. And according to Ayurvedic diagnosis, if something is neither hot nor cold, it benefits pitta. And it's really good on all functions in the digestive system. It improves liver function. It's a metabolic stimulant. It also increases the level of thyroid hormone, which means it just ups metabolism. And Indian long pepper is used to improve appetite and digestion. It's there to treat stomach ache. It's also used for heartburn, indigestion, intestinal gas, diarrhea, and has a tradition of use in cholera. I have no experience with this. I can't give you any studies to say this is good. So if you suffer from cholera, in addition to other things, you can add this to your diet. It's also been traditionally used in Ayurveda for asthma and bronchitis and cough. Now, in traditional Chinese medicine, it's called biba, which I just love that word, and it's called Fructus piperis longi. So if you're looking for the Latin trinomial, that's what you're going to see on your labels. It's hot and bitter, so it's not necessarily considered spicy in this tradition, but it's also part of the herbal category called herbs that warm the interior and or expel the cold. It enters the large intestine and the stomach meridians, and it is very good for warming the middle, disperses cold from the stomach and intestines, and alleviating pain. So this tends to be used more for digestion in traditional Chinese medicine. And this is where it's important to get a good diagnosis, because the Chinese are very specific. So vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal pain, migraines, irregular menstruation, it all needs to be from cold, internal cold. If you are an internally hot person and you have all of these problems, this herb will make you worse. It is rarely used alone in medicine. Biba is part of many classical TCM herbal formulas. And so again, it's really a good idea if you want to use this therapeutically, you think you have cold and you have all these problems, I would definitely go to a TCM practitioner, acupuncturist, or qualified Chinese herbalist to get a really good formula that's specific for you. And if you're lucky, this will be in it. Now, in Western medicine, Western herbalism, long pepper really hasn't traditionally been used. If you look into the classic herbals, if it's mentioned at all, it's usually lumped in with black pepper. Now, there are some interesting research studies using really horrific methods, meaning irradiating rat livers and causing them liver fibrosis, and then see what happens when they give them long pepper. Well, I'm happy to report that the rat livers improve. I can't say I approve of these studies, but the information is interesting. And if you start looking this up in Western sources, they say, oh, there's not enough evidence to say that it does anything except make your food taste nice. And it says, but in my opinion, thousands of years of clinical use in India and China, who are two of the most populous countries on the planet. So obviously, these types of medicine haven't dented their birth rates or longevity. But there are all sorts of cautions in terms of don't use it if you're on, 47 different drugs. So this is where you need to talk to your healthcare practitioner and a pharmacist just to make sure. But the essential oil is used in aromatherapy and also in massage therapy. And it's used for things like headaches, asthma, bronchitis, coughs, diarrhea, epilepsy, fever, stomachache, indigestion, and menstrual disorders. But I can't tell you, oh, you need to take this many grams and blah, 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 because there really is no information in Western herbalism. Now, obviously, if you want to add this to your food, it's no problem. Um, Obviously, Chinese and Indian people have been doing this for thousands of years, and they're still here. So culinary doses don't interfere with pharmaceuticals. So I think you're pretty much okay with this, especially if you're just using it in food or in a massage. You'll be fine. Now, what is the big constituent? I love the names for these chemicals because they're based on the plant. And I think this would be a nice one for a little orange cat or something. Pepperine, that's this. It's responsible for the pungency of both black pepper and long pepper. And the concentration is actually higher in the black pepper than it is in the long pepper. And you can also isolate it. And so got the image from my favorite image company site. It's called ResearchGate. Highly recommended if you're ever making slides. And then we have this isolated pepperine, and this is by impza.org, but it's on Wikipedia Commons, but we're supposed to give this person credit. Now, there's all kinds of other constituents in long pepper: palmitic acid, tetrahydropepperine acid, pepperindine. But pepperine is the main healing constituent in long pepper. And it's very, very effective in doing all the things that we said that long pepper does. Now, the supplements are mostly in traditional Chinese medicine and also with Ayurvedic. And meaning I really haven't seen a lot of these products on the market. Now, when I was in acupuncture school, we had it in our herbal pharmacy and we would put it in our formulas. We would give people dried herbs and let them make their teas. You can also get it in powdered form. It's kind of like freeze-dried coffee. They make a very strong tea from this, and then they freeze dry it, and then you just can put spoonfuls into warm water and drink it down. You can also get it in tincture form. You can get it in powdered form. You can get it in capsules. You can get extracts, and of course, you can get essential oils. Now, in both Ayurvedic and traditional Chinese paradigm, the long pepper is mostly used in formulas, but both of these traditions, usually a good acupuncturist or Chinese herbalist will give you some foods that you need to eat. And this can also be added to things like soups and sauces and teas. Now, cooking with long pepper, this is a spice that's often used in Indian, Thai, Cambodian, and Indonesian cooking. And it can be mistaken for black pepper on, it's a very honest mistake. But what's interesting about long pepper is that it's just a more mellow kind of whole favorite, whole tasting thing. It's just kind of a little more floral in its tastes. Now, one of my favorite YouTube channels is Tasting History with Max Miller. And in many of the medieval recipes that he does, he'll reenact some recipe for you, and he'll use long pepper. And it's kind of fun to watch him do this. So explore his channel with abandon, and I can give you a spoiler alert that it will be in a lot of these medieval recipes. Um, Now, I've also included some links for ideas and recipes to use with this delicious spice. And it's, as it is in Ayurvedic traditions, it's both spicy and sweet. And that's what gives it this unique flavor profile. It was used quite frequently in Roman cooking, and it's used to this day in all of those Asian cooking cuisines that I mentioned, but also in Moroccan cuisine and Ethiopian cuisine. And it's a very traditional spice that's put in something called beriberi, which is a masala mix. And masala is just a lovely word for mixed spices. So currently, currently a lot of Indian cook cuisines and cooks and chefs have been using more cayenne pepper in their recipes, which was introduced by the Portuguese. Um, you can, if you're not a fan of cayenne, you can still substitute the cayenne for the pipali. And they tend to use a lot of it in traditional pickle recipes. Now, I have never grown this herb, and I don't know anybody that does. If you look on the internet or do a little digging, the farms are really sweet. They basically grow these things, on trellises and basically harvest the flowers off of that. Now, I've included a lovely YouTube video on how to grow this herb. Obviously, because of where it's indigenous, you need to have a certain climate to do this. I don't think you would do very well up in Iceland unless you were in a greenhouse. But I have no experience with this, and I defer to this video for those of you who are interested in growing it on your own. So, however you wish to incorporate this lovely, lovely plant into your life, most of us will be limited by culinary experiences, but I was inspired by one of the recipes that I saw on Tasting History. And luckily, we have some lovely herb shops here in Bulgaria, Indian and Arab and Turkish shops that carry really lovely, lovely offerings in terms of exotic spices. And I was able to get some, and I can tell you, it's really a delicious thing to add to whatever it is that you're making. And you may find that it helps more chronic conditions, or it's a nice addition to your massage oil or an aromatherapy bath. Obviously, do a little patch test to make sure you don't put yourself very spicy, but it is much more gentle than pepper. So this is Stephanie, Georgia, saying thank you so much for spending your valuable time with me. Make sure to check out the links in the program notes. And until next time, be well.